Hey there, my sweet friends. I hope you are all well. Welcome or welcome back. If you are new, this is going to be a super fun project today because it is officially spooky season. October 1st means you can get out all of the spooky fun crafts. And so we're going to make this folio today. Lots of pockets in here, plenty of room for pictures and journaling. And I'm incorporating some rather large inserts. So let me show you those. I've got my beautiful Books and Ghost image printed here for the top, along with my favorite finishing details. And this folio not only has pockets that open in one direction, but we have an accordion style section here as well. So look how large I've got my printable for these inserts. This is so much fun, and I was able to complete this with just a couple of different sizes for the base, and so it was pretty quick to put together. So now you can see we open it this way. There's more pockets here, and then we can open it this way as well. So once I said lots of room in here for all of your holiday memories, and wouldn't this be a nice gift for someone? Maybe even use this as a way to document your October. So here is the last set of pages, and then also another section on the back. So this is going to be our project for today. And if that sounds good to you, then stick around and we will make it together. For today's project, we're going to be using this Park Lane paper pad Boo. And this is from the store formerly known as Joann's. We are all very sad to see that go, but this has a great collection of geometrics along with holiday themed prints. And it's very nice thick paper as well. So that helps to increase the structural stability of this little album and give me a lot of different prints to choose from. We're going to be creating the base for this with black cardstock. There's just a couple of simple measurements here, but I thought I would just go ahead and share those here. And so the first piece I'm going to cut to 8 high by 10 wide. And for this completed project today, we're going to need 4 total, so 2 on either side, and that is going to give us a total of 8 pockets. Going to be using that same black cardstock to make a connector, and so this piece is going to be 6 high by 10 wide. We're going to need 2 of those for this finished project, 1 for either side. And the last piece I'm cutting will be for a cover to wrap around so that I can join these together. So we're going to stick with our 6-inch height for that. And then we're going to go with 10 3/4. And that will give us enough for 5 inches on each side and enough room in the spine to add all of those paper layers that we want to add. I'm not going to worry about scoring this one until we have those inside sections done. So let's put this one to the side. And then our connector will be scored at 5 with the widest portion at the top. Go ahead and fold on that score line and use your score tool just to reinforce that crease. For the piece that will become the pocket sections, I do want to have the widest portion at the top again, and then score it at 5, just like the last piece. And then I'll turn it so that the shorter end is at the top, and then score that at 6. And so we're going to wind up having a finished size of 6 high by 5 wide. I know it can be difficult to see some of these score lines on this darker colored cardstock, but I will just be folding this for each of those scores that I made. And then once again, coming back with my score tool and then also fold it this way. I will come in with my scissor and clip just the tiniest little sliver off of here, and that is going to reduce some of the bulk that could accumulate within our score line. And so I'm just taking off a tiny little bit, and I will be done cutting right at the portion where those score lines intersect. You see, it isn't very much that I'm taking off, but that will help keep that bulk out of the inside of our pocket. So now you can see we've created just this 2-pocket portion, and I want to join that with another one that I have already prepared. And so you can see I have my connector piece, and I've added my double-sided tape to what would be the inside fold. I put it on both sides, but I'm going to remove the backing from one side at a time as I work along. That will help me to keep it from getting stuck where I don't want it to be stuck while I am trying to join all these pieces together. And it's a little bit easier to see that placement of the double-sided tape when I have the backing on, but I will be using my 2-glue combo for all of these joining sections so that I can be assured to have a good contact. And so let's just go ahead and add our Tombow now. And then I am going to flip this so that I can position it right along where this score lines are. It's easier to start in the corner and then get it positioned so that it is nice and straight and even. And so this is going to be inside this pocket. We want to pull the backing from this side now. And so just like the previous section, I do want to adhere this 2-glue combo to what will be the back page here. And so once again, I'm just going to bring these together, making sure to put my corner in first and then adjust so that those score lines will line up exactly where I want. So now what we could have is 4 pockets in a row, but for our purpose, we are going to fold it on that line. And so when we open our folio, it will open in one direction and then also in another. We have to cover the back portion with our pattern paper before we move along so that we can seal it up when we fold up the pocket. So let's just go ahead and position this so that we can get this end closer so I can see over top. And so I have my pattern paper cut to be 5 7/8 high by 4 7/8 wide, and I am going to continue my 2-glue combo, of course, and I am thinking of these as being 2-page layouts. You do not have to do that. Whatever works for you, mix and match and get through your stash. But once you place this down, you're going to get a nice border of that dark, colorful cardstock. You can take this design to any collection, really, and it will work. Just switch out the cardstock so that it will coordinate with what you're working with. But I can see this as being for Christmas, really, or any holiday or theme. So I would just continue to work along here and get these in position. I love candy corn, and we just created a really fun banner with my grandson. I had a die from Scrap Diva, and it was the larger candy corn, and he was able to get the pieces glued together. He's 2.5, so that was a really fun family project to work on. Remember, these two will be a 2-page layout for the next fold. So I'm just going to continue to add these patterns. And every piece that I'm adding will increase how thick and sturdy this is. So that will be very nice. There's that last one for this side. Before we close up those pockets, let's just go ahead and work on what will be the back portion. So folding these up here. And so we need to focus those patterns on this portion. I thought it would be fun to utilize one of the larger images from the paper pad. Don't get to use those too often. So whenever I can sneak one in. This is on a very vibrant yellow, and so I think that this would be a great place to add some journaling, as it will be very easy to see against that brighter color background. And that helps me to utilize the B side of this pattern. Has a little bit of an orange overlay there. So it's still very festive. And so this will show on the inside. Now let's go ahead and focus on our pockets. So basically what I want to do is seal these up with my Tombow so that I don't take up too much of the space inside. And I'm just going to lay in a very thin line here, a little bit over from the edge so that it doesn't squeeze out and become sticky. But even though we have clipped a little bit of that edge off, it's not going to be noticeable because we're gluing that right onto the same color cardstock for the border for the lower section. So let's just go ahead and continue to work along for that. You would press this for a bit so that you get a good contact, and that way that glue will set up well and be a good strong seam for you. But I'm just going to keep working along here, and then when I get them all done, I'll press them all at the same time, and that will keep this project rolling. Let's see this one. And the last one. So now we've got 4 generous size pockets. And we do want to cover the front of them with a coordinating pattern. I think it's nice to have enough contrast if it's color wise or maybe the scale. And so let's just go ahead and add these here. I got a couple of different choices picked out. I want to make sure that I have the best one in place. You know, I'm going to have to put my candy corn over here. That will help me to utilize those offcuts as I'm working along. So now the front of the pocket pattern paper is going to be 1 7/8 by 4 7/8. And that way we're going to maintain that nice border that we have working along, and continue to use your 2 glue combo. Maybe we need to get a new glue soon. I think it's getting a little bit stuck at the bottom. So this is going to be a nice way to add a layering pattern without it looking too busy, because the scale is different, and then we still have those borders of the cardstock that is actually the pocket. Know if it is set that the colors have to go in a certain order, but I'm pretty sure the image I looked up for our banner had the yellow at the bottom and the orange in the middle, but it's still pretty cute this way, and I wouldn't have noticed it except for that we just made that project with my grandson, so I guess every way that it works could be fine. Now we have all of these in place, and that's going to be so nice for our inserts. Then we do have that other side for some journaling or some larger images. And we need to have 2 of these for our finished project. And I have already completed the other one off camera. And so you see I have just continued to use those patterns and mix and match them so that we get a nice layering. Ooh, that might be hard on camera. So sorry if that hurt your eyes. And what we want to do is attach one of these to each side, and it makes sense for them to open so that we can have these pockets and then the inside. So I'm going to be aware of where I place these and where my glue is going to go. Of course, make sure that you've got your double-sided adhesive in place. These inserts did get quite bulky with all of those paper layers, so it is very important to leave enough room in the spine for not only this paper, but the additional finishing details that you want to add. You want to make sure that this keeps a nice shape. Or you may get a wedge. I like wedges as well. Just means you filled it up nicely. Making sure to keep everything upright instead of going upside down. I have used this process in a lot of my folios because I do want to make sure that I have left enough room to get this full portion down. And if I have to borrow a little bit from the spine, I am okay with that. And I just want to make sure that everything folds exactly the way I want it to. And so see, I have put those corners together, brought that together, and then just made sure that it was straight and even across the back. So now we want to do the same for this side, but remember we want these to open that way. So I'm going to put my glue on what would be the back side. That you start off with enough cardstock so that you can complete the whole project. So now did double check again to see that everything is going in the right direction, and I'll put this back into the corner same as I did for my first side. The hardest part of this really is keeping your fingers out of the glue, which I am not always very good at, but I think we're going to be okay this time. And now you can see that we have a definite amount of space here, and we'll bring our scoreboard back so that we can score it, and that'll give us a nice crisp line, a good fold on the outside, and it'll just look a little bit nicer that way. And so I'm going to line up this score edge with one of the scores on the scoreboard, and I'll just go a little bit on the outside of it, giving a generous amount of room here for folding, and then flip it over and do the same thing. Doesn't matter what number you arrive at the top, just so that you got a good full score line showing. And then this will be ready to have the last 2 pieces added. First, let's just go ahead and fold on that score line. You see how nice that looks with that straight, even score. Do that for this side as well. Press that over to get it really established. So see how good that looks. Nice and straight and even across the back. And then we do want to go ahead and finish these 2 pages with some additional pattern paper. I do hate to sacrifice cut aparts, but I love the pattern of the spider web on top of that white background, and so I just thought it was worth it this time to do that. And I also really love the cardstock border showing as we are working along. That's one side. First, the last one. This is also a very forgiving pattern if you are making something with your offcuts, because it won't wind up to be upside down. You can get the best use out of it. So let's just go ahead and finish the back while we're at it. And I got more of that candy cane. You know, I'm just going to have to use every last bit of it. These are kind of an all-over pattern. I don't think it is directional too much. I'm just going to open this up so I can get it flat back on the surface. Since I can't see over top of it as well, I'm going to try and get it exactly as straight and even and centered as I can. So that's going to be the back. Look how nice and full that is now. You wouldn't think you'd arrive at that much bulk, but you really do after having all of these paper layers added. So here is our first pocket section. Remember, it opens that way, and then got this one as well, and this one opens that way. So that is going to be fun to create and difficult to get pictures of. So remember that we need some inserts for our pockets. And I'm going to utilize one of the printables from my shop. This is called Books and Ghosts, and it has 9 images. And I just went ahead and printed this in the size that it would be designed for on a sheet where 9 images fit on one page. And so that's usually the size that I work with, but I thought it would be fun this time to go through and really make these much bigger. And so because this is a 300 DPI quality, you're going to be able to increase that size without losing any of the beautiful effects of this printable. And so I just opened this in a Word document, and then I cropped down to each image that I wanted to print, and then I clicked on the image and drug that corner out to scale it. And so for this book, I think 3.5 inches wide is pretty good so that it fits in there well and not too snug, but leaves us a little room for some additional flat keepsakes or mementos. So this winds up to be quite a large picture. You can see the difference and see how nice the print quality remains. And so for the larger images, I do recommend just printing on printer paper and then backing it with a nice sturdy cardstock. That way the ink really has the opportunity to saturate through that paper and be a nice, clear, crisp image. So let's put our images in here. Now, how fun is that? This is way more funner than little images, I think. And so as we continue to work along, of course, this is going to give us more thickness and sturdiness. And I just love these ghosts. I really love books, and I love ghosts, and I love Halloween, and I love candy corn. So I'm hitting a walk-off home run on this book, I think. This one is cute too. I like pink for Halloween, or actually really any kind of pastel is fun too. And I have, the image has 9 separate pictures, and so I can use one for each pocket of 8 on the inside. And then I did print the image for the outside in the regular size that I would typically print, because I don't want it to take over that whole cover. So I did pull a little bit of my beautiful plaid ribbon here, and do want to tack that down so that we have a nice closure for all of those things we want to add inside. And I do like to just tack this down temporarily, and then what will hold it in place is the glue layer. So I'm going to use that same pattern from the back cover, but I did add a layering pattern as well, just so that we'll have a little bit of extra interest there and use up some of those scraps. We might be down to our last project on this thing of Tombow, but you see now we have our glue, and so that's really going to hold that ribbon in place. Hard to see from this angle, but yep, now we've got that right perfectly. I'm just going to go ahead and tie this, and then I can come back and clip the excess when we're done. do want to include a doily, of course. So I've got this one cut out, and it's going to go a little bit higher, but pretty close to the middle. I do want to make sure to leave plenty of room for the image that I picked out, which was the inspiration for this. Of course, I'm going to use that ghost with his little cup of coffee there, and I did add the same cardstock border for consistency, a little bit of extra structure, and then also pop that up on a spacer. So now we're going to get some depth for the front cover, and once again I'm going a little higher so that I leave room for my flowers. And so here's that pretty simple little flower arrangement. I do want to make sure not to cover too much of that coffee, so I'm just going to position that kind of right here along the bottom. I've got a couple of flowers. I created these with dies, some foliage, netting, loopy twine bows, and then more of that pretty plaid ribbon from Really Reasonable Ribbon. And I do want to glue this down with hot glue. Then I'll put on my favorite finishing details to have some spider webs that kind of go along with the background of these ghosty guys. I put a couple of orangey sequins here. I'll use my Tombow for those as well. Trim the excess ribbon. Remember to cut these at an angle so they don't fray. That's going to be it for our pocket folio. This really was inspired by a card that I created earlier this week, and I just wanted to utilize some of my offcuts. These were in my already used package so that I knew I could get more projects out of it, and so I just used that same ghosty in pretty similar details from one to the other, but because this card was a little bit narrower and taller, I was able to incorporate one additional pattern paper for that. So that is going to be it. I sure do hope that you are well on your way to getting your Halloween projects started, or maybe even some of them finished. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. Check in the description for links. And as always, I'm wishing you a happy and productive day, and I thank you so much for watching. Bye.